My boss fired me for something I didn't do, so I showed him what I actually found on his computer. Brennan called me into his office on a Tuesday morning, his face stone cold. He'd been acting strange all week, avoiding eye contact, whispering with HR behind closed doors. "We're letting you go," he said without preamble. "Effective immediately." I stared at him, confused. "What? Why?" "Sexual harassment complaint," he replied, sliding a folder across his desk. "Multiple female employees have come forward." My stomach dropped. The complaint detailed inappropriate comments I'd supposedly made to 3 coworkers. Dates, times, exact quotes, all fabricated but disturbingly specific. "This is insane," I said, scanning the documents. "I never said any of this." "The investigation is concluded," Brennan said. "Security will escort you out." I'd worked at Meridian Tech for 4 years. Clean record, good reviews, never even a write-up. This came from nowhere. Walking past my cubicle to collect my things, I noticed something odd. My computer monitor was slightly askew, like someone had been using it. The keyboard wasn't in its usual position either. That's when I remembered Brennan had asked to borrow my login last week for a system update. Said IT needed to access my machine remotely. Security was distracted, arguing about which exit to use. I had maybe 2 minutes. I slipped back to my desk and logged in. My browser history showed websites I'd never visited. Dating sites, adult content, social media pages belonging to my female coworkers. Someone had been building a digital trail to support the harassment claims, but they'd made a mistake. The activity timestamps showed I was supposedly browsing inappropriate content during my vacation last month, when I was in the hospital with my dad after his stroke. I forwarded everything to my personal email, just as security returned. 3 days later, I met with a lawyer. She reviewed the evidence and smiled grimly. "Your boss made this too obvious," she said. "We can prove these accusations are fabricated." "But why would he do this?" I asked. She pulled out another folder. "I did some digging. Your company is being audited by the state. Someone's been embezzling funds through fake vendor accounts." My blood ran cold. I remembered Brennan asking me to approve invoices last quarter. Vendors I'd never heard of, but he said they were legitimate. "He needed a scapegoat," she continued. "Someone to blame when the audit finds the missing money. But firing you for theft would require proof. Sexual harassment is harder to disprove." The lawsuit hit Meridian Tech like a sledgehammer. During discovery, investigators found Brennan's real browser history. Gambling debts, desperate emails to loan sharks, and correspondence with a company called Phoenix Consulting, which existed only on paper. He'd stolen $340,000 over 2 years. The female employees who'd supposedly complained, they testified they'd never filed reports. Brennan had forged their signatures using documents from HR files. When the FBI arrested him, Brennan looked at me through the conference room window. His mouth moved silently, but I could read his lips. "You're dead." I thought he was just angry about getting caught. Then my apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen, but my laptop had been tampered with. New files appeared overnight. Files that would destroy my reputation if they surfaced. Someone knocked on my door at midnight. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman I didn't recognize. "Phoenix Consulting sent me," she said quietly. "We need to talk about your boss. He wasn't working alone." I stared through the peephole at the woman outside my door. She was maybe 35, wearing a dark coat that looked expensive. Her hair was pulled back in a way that said business, but her eyes kept darting toward the stairs like she expected someone to follow her. "I don't know what Phoenix Consulting is," I called through the door. "Yes, you do," she replied. "You forwarded their invoices to accounts payable. Brennan told you they were legitimate vendors." My hand froze on the deadbolt. She was right. I had processed those payments, dozens of them over the past 2 years, always small amounts, nothing that would trigger an audit flag. "What do you want?" "To keep you alive," she said simply. "Brennan's in federal custody, but his partners aren't. They think you know more than you do." I opened the door but kept the chain latch engaged. Up close, she looked tired. Dark circles under her eyes, the kind that came from too many sleepless nights. "Who are you?" "Detective Rodriguez, Financial Crimes Unit." She held up her badge. "I've been investigating Phoenix Consulting for 8 months. Your lawsuit cracked the case wide open." I unlatched the chain and let her in. My apartment felt different with a stranger in it, smaller. She moved through the space like she was cataloging everything. Exits, windows, places someone could hide. How much danger am I in? Depends on what you know about the Kowalski brothers. The name hit me like ice water. I'd heard Brennan on the phone with someone named Kowalski once. He'd gotten angry when he saw me listening and slammed his office door. "I don't know anything about them. They think you do." Phoenix Consulting was their front. They've been laundering money through companies like Meridian Tech for years, small amounts spread across dozens of businesses. She pulled out her phone and showed me photos. 2 men who looked like they'd stepped out of a crime movie, expensive suits, cold eyes, the kind of people you cross the street to avoid. Victor and Pavel Kowalski, they're not the type to leave loose ends. What kind of loose ends? The kind that testify in federal court. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on my couch. "But I don't know anything. I just processed invoices." "You processed their invoices. You have access to their payment records. You can testify about the pattern of transactions. Can't the FBI get that information themselves? Some of it. But they need someone who is inside the process. Someone who can explain how the scam worked from the inside." She sat across from me, leaning forward. "Here's what we know. The Kowalskis identify mid-level employees at tech companies, people with invoice approval authority but not enough seniority to ask too many questions. They compromise these employees through gambling debts, blackmail, or simple greed. Brennan had gambling debts. Exactly. Once they have their man inside, they start small. Invoices for consulting services, software licenses, equipment rentals. Nothing suspicious on its own. I thought about all those Phoenix Consulting invoices. Web development services, IT consulting, software maintenance. They'd seemed legitimate at the time. The money gets cleaned through multiple shell companies, then funneled back to their legitimate businesses. Real estate, restaurants, construction, classic money laundering. How many companies are involved? We've identified 47 so far, but we think there are more. 47 companies, hundreds of employees processing fake invoices. The scope was staggering. Why didn't Brennan just fire me normally? Why the harassment scheme? Because firing you for cause would trigger an investigation. HR would review your work, audit your approvals. They'd find the fake invoices. But if I was fired for harassment, no one looks at your work history. The company just wants you gone quietly. It was brilliant in its simplicity. Destroy someone's reputation so thoroughly that no one would believe them if they tried to expose the truth. The break-in at your apartment, Rodriguez continued. They were planting evidence. If you'd tried to go public with what you knew, they could discredit you completely. What kind of evidence? She hesitated. The kind that would make the harassment charges look real. My stomach turned. They were going to frame me twice. It gets worse. We have reason to believe they were planning to eliminate you permanently. The room seemed to tilt. Eliminate? Make it look like suicide. Guilt over the harassment charges, career ruined, financial problems. It's a story that would make sense to everyone. I stood up and walked to the window. The street looked different now. Every shadow could hide a threat. What do I do? Testify. Help us take them down. And if I don't, they'll kill you anyway. At least this way you have a chance. Rodriguez left me with her card and a direct line to the FBI's witness protection coordinator. She also left me with a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, thinking about how quickly my life had spiraled out of control. 4 days ago, I was a normal IT worker with a boring job and a routine life. Now I was caught in the middle of a federal investigation, with professional killers wanting me dead. The next morning, I called in sick to my temp job and met Rodriguez at a coffee shop downtown. She'd brought backup, a federal agent named Martinez who looked like he could bench press a car. "We need you to wear a wire," Rodriguez said without preamble. "What? Why?" "Brennan's lawyer is pushing for a deal. He wants to trade information for a reduced sentence." "That's good, right? Only if we can verify what he tells us. We need you to get him talking about the Kowalskis." Martinez slid a small device across the table. It looked like a pen, but when he clicked it, a tiny red light appeared. "State-of-the-art recording equipment. Battery lasts 8 hours. You want me to visit Brennan in jail?" "He made bail yesterday," Rodriguez said. "House arrest, ankle monitor, the works. But he can have visitors. He'll never talk to me. He knows I'm the reason he got caught. That's exactly why he'll talk to you. He's angry, scared, probably desperate. People in his position make mistakes." I held the recording device, feeling its weight. Such a small thing to carry so much danger. What if he suspects something? "Then you leave immediately," Martinez said. "Don't try to be a hero." That afternoon, I stood outside Brennan's house in the suburbs. It was a modest 2-story colonial with a neat lawn and flower beds his wife had probably planted. The American dream, built on stolen money. I could see the ankle monitor blinking through his window as I rang the doorbell. Brennan answered wearing sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt. His hair was unkempt, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "What the hell are you doing here?" I wanted to talk. "About what? How you destroyed my life?" "About the truth." He stared at me for a long moment, then stepped aside to let me in. His house was a mess. Boxes everywhere like his wife had been packing. Pizza boxes and empty beer bottles covered the coffee table. "Rachel left me," he said, following my gaze. "Took the kids to her mother's. Can't say I blame her." "I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you here to gloat?" "Neither. I'm here because I want to understand why." He laughed bitterly. "Why what? Why I framed you for harassment? Why I stole money? Why I ruined both our lives? All of it." He collapsed into his recliner, and for a moment he looked more pathetic than threatening. "It started small," he said. "Just a few thousand here and there. Victor said it was temporary, just until I could pay off my debts." "Victor Kowalski?" His head snapped up. "How do you know that name?" "The FBI mentioned it." "Jesus Christ, they know about Victor?" I tried to keep my expression neutral, but inside my heart was racing. The recording device felt hot in my pocket. "They know about Phoenix Consulting." "Phoenix was just the tip of the iceberg," he said, running his hands through his hair. "Victor's got operations in 12 states, dozens of shell companies." "How did you meet him?" "Online poker. I was down about 50 grand, couldn't make payments. Victor reached out, said he could help." "In exchange for what?" "Access. He needed someone inside a tech company who could approve invoices without asking questions." "So you recruited me. I needed someone trustworthy to process the payments, someone who wouldn't get suspicious. But then the audit started. State auditors are thorough. They would have found everything eventually. Victor said I needed to create a distraction. The harassment charges. It was supposed to be simple. Get you fired quietly, maybe relocate you somewhere else. Victor's people would have made sure you stayed quiet." "Made sure how?" His face went pale. "I thought they just meant money, a payoff to keep your mouth shut. But that's not what they meant. No. After your lawsuit started, Victor called me. He was furious. Said you were a liability that needed to be eliminated." "Eliminated how?" "I don't know. I didn't want to know. That's when I realized how deep I was in." I leaned forward. "Brennan, These people are going to kill me, and probably you too. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. Help me stop them. I can't. You don't understand what Victor's capable of. Tell me. He was quiet for a long time. Then he got up and went to the window, peering through the blinds. 2 years ago, there was another accountant in Phoenix, guy named Henderson. He started asking questions about some of the same shell companies. What happened to him? Car accident. Single vehicle. Late at night. Went off a bridge. You think Victor? I know Victor. Henderson's car was found with $40,000 in cash in the trunk. Made it look like he was skimming money, got drunk, and crashed. But you don't think that's what happened? Henderson didn't drink. Never touched alcohol in his life. The weight of what I was dealing with hit me fully. These weren't just white-collar criminals. They were killers. There's more, Brennan continued. A bookkeeper in Detroit, an office manager in Atlanta, all dead within 6 months of asking the wrong questions. Why are you telling me this? Because Victor's already marked both of us for death. The only question is when. I thought about Rodriguez's offer of witness protection, a new identity, new life, new everything. It was starting to sound less like a burden and more like salvation. What if we could stop them? We can't. Victor's got judges, police, politicians. He's untouchable. The FBI doesn't think so. The FBI doesn't know Victor like I do. But as he said it, something shifted in his expression. Like maybe, for the first time, he was considering the possibility. What would it take? He asked quietly. Testimony. Records. Evidence of the whole operation. I'd be dead within a week. Not if Victor's in prison. You'd need evidence of the murders, financial records, communications. Victor's too smart to leave that kind of trail. Where would he keep it? Brennan looked at me like I was insane. You're not seriously thinking about going after Victor directly. I'm thinking about staying alive. Then run. Change your name. Move to another country. It's your only chance. What about you? I'm already dead. I just haven't stopped breathing yet. I left Brennan's house with more questions than answers, but the recording device in my pocket held valuable information. Victor Kowalski wasn't just a money launderer. He was a killer who'd eliminated anyone who threatened his operation. Rodriguez listened to the recording with a grim expression. This changes everything, she said. We're not just talking about financial crimes anymore. Can you protect me? We can try. But Brennan's right about one thing. Victor's got resources. He's been operating for years without getting caught. So what do? We build a case, start with the financial crimes, use those to get warrants for the murder investigations. How long will that take? Months, maybe years. I might not have months. Rodriguez nodded grimly. That's why we need to move fast. Over the next week, I found myself living in a strange twilight existence. I moved to a safe house the FBI provided, a nondescript apartment in a neighborhood I'd never seen before. I couldn't contact friends or family, couldn't go to familiar places, or maintain my normal routine. Martinez checked on me daily, bringing groceries and updates on the investigation. The FBI had started surveillance on known Kowalski associates, monitoring their communications and financial transactions. We're building a timeline, he explained. Every suspicious death, every shell company, every fake invoice, it's a massive operation. Any progress on finding Victor? He's good at staying hidden. Multiple residences, shell companies for everything. But we'll find him. I spent my days reading, watching TV, and trying not to think about the fact that professional killers were looking for me. It was like being in prison, except the guards were trying to keep people out instead of in. Then, on a Tuesday morning, everything changed. Martinez arrived looking shaken. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Brennan's dead. The words hit me like a physical blow. How? Apparent suicide. Hanging in his basement. You don't believe it. His ankle monitor showed he never left the house. No signs of struggle, but the timing is suspicious. Victor? Has to be. The question is how. We sat in silence for a moment. If Victor could reach Brennan under house arrest with federal monitoring, nowhere was safe. There's something else, Martinez said. Before he died, Brennan called our tip line. Left a message. He played the recording on his phone. Brennan's voice was shaky, afraid. This is Brennan Hutchins. If something happens to me, check storage unit 247 at Secure Space on Maple Street. The key is taped under my kitchen sink. Tell Rodriguez she was right about everything. You checked the storage unit? This morning. It's full of records, financial documents, communications, evidence of the whole operation. Including the murders? Including the murders. Brennan documented everything. He was more scared of Victor than we realized. The evidence from Brennan's storage unit was devastating. Financial records showing millions of dollars laundered through dozens of companies. Email communications between Victor and various employees he'd compromised. And most damning of all, detailed records of the people who'd been eliminated for getting too close to the truth. Henderson in Phoenix, a bookkeeper named Thompson in Detroit, an office manager named Walsh in Atlanta, and 6 others across the country, all killed within months of discovering irregularities in their company's finances. It's enough to bring charges, Rodriguez said. Multiple counts of murder, racketeering, money laundering. If we can find Victor. Still no luck with that? He's vanished, but his brother Pavel is still active. We're watching him, hoping he'll lead us to Victor. That night, alone in the safe house, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like a threat. Brennan's death had shown that Victor could reach anyone, anywhere. I was making coffee the next morning when I heard a key in the lock. Martinez wasn't supposed to arrive until noon. I grabbed the kitchen knife and crept toward the front door. The lock turned, and the door opened slowly. Pavel Kowalski stepped inside. He was younger than Victor, maybe 40, with the same cold eyes I'd seen in the photos. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd never had to worry about consequences. "Hello, Thomas," he said calmly. "We need to talk." I held the knife in front of me, but we both knew it wouldn't help. If he wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. "How did you find me?" "Your friend Detective Rodriguez isn't as careful as she thinks." He closed the door behind him and looked around the apartment. "Federal safe house. Not bad. Better than the motel in Phoenix where we found Henderson. What do you want?" "To offer you a choice." He sat down on the couch like he owned the place. "My brother is upset about recent developments. Your lawsuit, the federal investigation, Brennan's unfortunate death. It's caused problems for our business." "Good. Is it? Because now 12 families are without income. Dozens of employees will lose their jobs, all because you couldn't leave well enough alone. People died. People die every day. Most of them don't matter. They mattered to me. That's your problem. You think you're some kind of hero." Pavel stood up and walked to the window. "Here's your choice. You disappear. New identity, new life, far away from here. We provide $50,000 to help you start over. In exchange for what? You never testify. Never contact the FBI again. Never speak about any of this to anyone. And if I refuse, then you join Brennan." I thought about Rodriguez, Martinez, all the FBI agents working to build a case, about Henderson and Thompson and Walsh and all the others who died for asking questions. "I can't do that." Pavel nodded like he'd expected that answer. "Then you'll die like them. But first, we'll make sure everyone you care about understands the consequences of crossing us. I don't have anyone left. Your sister Jennifer in Seattle. Your nephew Kyle, who just started college. Your mother in the nursing home in Tampa." My blood turned to ice. I'd never mentioned my family to anyone connected to this case. "You bastard! They're all under surveillance. One phone call from me, and they'll have accidents. Car crashes, house fires, medical emergencies. The FBI can't protect them all. What do you want?" "I want you to call Detective Rodriguez. Tell her you've changed your mind about testifying. Tell her you're dropping out of witness protection. She'll know something's wrong. Then convince her nothing is wrong." He handed me my phone. "Do it now." I stared at the phone, thinking about Jennifer, about Kyle, about my mother. They had no idea their lives were in danger because of me. If I do this, you leave them alone? If you do this and disappear forever, they'll never know how close they came to dying. I dialed Rodriguez's number with shaking hands. "Thomas, what's wrong?" "I'm done," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can't do this anymore." "What are you talking about?" "The testimony, the case, all of it. I want out." "Thomas, we've been through this. Victor will kill you if you don't testify. Maybe, but at least my family will be safe." There was a long pause. "Someone's there, isn't it?" she said quietly. Pavel was watching me intently. I met his eyes and nodded. "I'm fine. I just can't live like this anymore. Where do you want to meet?" "I don't. I'm leaving town tonight. Don't try to find me." "Thomas!" I hung up. Pavel smiled. "Very good. Now, let's discuss your relocation. What happened next would haunt me for years." Pavel wasn't just offering me a way out. He was offering me a way into a different kind of prison. One where I'd spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, knowing that any mistake could mean death for people I loved. But as we talked about fake identities and new cities, I started to notice things. Pavel was confident, but he was also nervous. He kept checking his phone, glancing at the window. He was expecting someone. "Is Victor coming?" I asked. "My brother doesn't handle the details anymore, but he's nearby." Pavel's expression flickered. Just for a second, but enough to confirm what I suspected. "How nearby? That's not your concern. But it was my concern. Because if Victor was close, it meant this whole thing was more than just a relocation offer. It was an execution disguised as a negotiation." Pavel's phone buzzed. He read the message and frowned. "Change of plans," he said. "We're leaving now." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere more private." I knew that if I left this apartment, I'd never be seen alive again. Despite his promises about relocation, Pavel was taking me somewhere to die. "I need to pack my things." "You won't need them." That's when I was certain. "Actually," I said, "I think I changed my mind about testifying." Pavel's hand moved to his jacket. "Too late for that, is it?" I lunged for the kitchen. Not for the knife I'd dropped, but for the phone Rodriguez had given me for emergencies. It had a panic button that would bring FBI backup immediately. Pavel tackled me before I could reach it, but the struggle knocked over a lamp, sending it crashing to the floor. "You stupid bastard," he snarled, pulling a gun. "You could have lived. So could Henderson, and Thompson, and Walsh. They were business decisions. This is a personal one." I heard footsteps on the stairs outside. Heavy boots moving fast. Pavel heard them too. His eyes went wide. "FBI, open up!" The door exploded inward. Federal agents poured into the apartment, weapons drawn. Pavel spun toward them, raising his gun, but Martinez put 2 bullets in his chest before he could fire. As Pavel collapsed, Rodriguez helped me to my feet. "Are you hurt? How did you know?" "The phone call. You mentioned your family. You've never talked about family before. You've been monitoring the apartment? Since yesterday. We knew they'd found you." Martinez was checking Pavel's pulse. "He's dead." Rodriguez knelt beside the body and searched his pockets, pulling out his phone. "Recent messages," she said, scrolling through them. "Looks like Victor's been coordinating from somewhere nearby." "How nearby?" She held up the phone. "According to this, he's in room 237 at the Marriott downtown." 20 minutes later, we were racing through downtown traffic with a full FBI tactical team. I sat in the back of Rodriguez's car, wearing a bulletproof vest and wondering how my life had become an action movie. "This could all be over in an hour," Rodriguez said. Victor's been our white whale for 2 years. What if it's a trap? Then we'll deal with it. The Marriott was a 40-story tower in the heart of the financial district. FBI agents surrounded the building while others evacuated guests from the floor above and below room 237. I watched from the command vehicle as agents prepared to breach Victor's room. "Target acquired," came the voice over the radio. "Adult male, matches description. Is he armed? Can't tell. He's sitting at a desk, appears to be working on a laptop. Move in." The next few minutes were chaos. Shouting, the sound of a door being smashed. More shouting, then silence. "Target secured," the voice said finally. "Victor Kowalski is in custody." Rodriguez grinned. "We got him, but something felt wrong. It had been too easy. Why was he just sitting there?" I asked. He had to know we were coming. Maybe he didn't have anywhere else to run, or maybe he wanted to be caught. An hour later at FBI headquarters, I watched through one-way glass as Rodriguez interrogated Victor Kowalski. He was smaller than I'd expected. Mid-50s, gray hair, expensive suit. He looked more like a banker than a killer. "We have evidence of at least 9 murders," Rodriguez was saying. "Multiple counts of racketeering, money laundering, witness intimidation." Victor said nothing. "Your brother is dead. Your network is compromised. It's over." Still nothing. "We can offer a deal if you cooperate. Tell us about the other operations, the people you worked with." Victor smiled for the first time. "Detective Rodriguez," he said in a slight accent I couldn't place. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into. Enlighten me." Phoenix Consulting was one shell company among hundreds. Pavel and I were middle management at best. Rodriguez leaned forward. "Who do you work for?" "People who don't appreciate attention." "What people?" "The kind who can reach federal witnesses in safe houses. The kind who can make FBI detectives disappear." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. You think this ends with my arrest? You think Thomas is safe now?" Victor looked directly at the one-way glass like he could see me watching. "This is just the beginning." 2 days later, Rodriguez got a call that would change everything we thought we knew about the case. "They found something in Victor's hotel room," she told me. "Financial records showing payments to dozens of government officials, judges, prosecutors, police chiefs. Bribes? More than that. It looks like they've been running a systematic corruption operation for years. How high does it go? We don't know yet, but some of these payments were to people involved in our investigation." The implication hit me like a truck. There's a mole in the FBI? Or worse, multiple moles. What does that mean for the case? It means we can't trust anyone. Over the next week, the investigation expanded beyond anything I could have imagined. The financial records from Victor's hotel room revealed a network of corruption that reached into every level of law enforcement. 3 federal judges were arrested. A U.S. attorney was indicted. 7 FBI agents were suspended pending investigation. And that was just the beginning. "It's like pulling a thread," Rodriguez explained during one of our daily meetings. "Every arrest leads to 2 more. Where does it end? We don't know. But we're starting to understand why Victor seemed so confident. He had reason to believe he was untouchable. And now we're finding out just how deep this goes." The media had gotten hold of the story by then. The headlines were sensational. "Massive corruption scandal rocks FBI," and "Organized crime infiltrates federal government." My name was kept out of the papers, but I knew it was only a matter of time before someone leaked it. "We need to move you again," Martinez said. "Too many people know about this safe house." "Where to?" "Somewhere no one will think to look." The new safe house was a farmhouse in rural Virginia, 2 hours from anywhere that mattered. It was isolated, secure, and mind-numbingly boring. I spent my days reading reports about the expanding investigation and trying not to think about how many powerful people wanted me dead. Then, 3 weeks after Victor's arrest, Rodriguez arrived with news that changed everything. "Victor's been murdered." "What? How?" "Someone got to him in federal prison, made it look like a suicide, but we know better. Who could reach him there?" "That's what we're trying to figure out, but it means the people above Victor are cleaning house." "Am I next?" "We don't know, but we're taking precautions." Those precautions included moving me to a different safe house every few days, changing my identity documents, and limiting my contact with anyone connected to the investigation. It was like being erased from existence one piece at a time. But the investigation continued. Every day brought new arrests, new revelations, new evidence of just how extensive the corruption had become. A month after Victor's death, Rodriguez came to see me with an unexpected proposal. "We want you to go public." "What do you mean?" "Testify before Congress. Tell your story on national television." "Are you insane? That would be signing my death warrant." "Maybe. Or maybe it would be the safest thing you could do." "How do you figure that?" "Right now, you're a secret. Someone only a few people know about. If you go public, become a household name, it becomes much harder to kill you quietly." I thought about it for a long time. The idea of stepping into the spotlight was terrifying, but so was spending the rest of my life hiding in the shadows. What would I have to do? Tell the truth, start to finish. How Brennan framed you, how you discovered the corruption, what you learned about the murders. And then what? Then we see what happens. The congressional hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in October. I spent the previous week preparing with FBI lawyers, going over my testimony, anticipating questions. The night before the hearing, I sat in my hotel room under heavy guard and thought about everything that had led to this moment. A year ago, I was just another office worker, processing invoices and living a quiet life. Now I was about to testify before Congress about a corruption scandal that had already brought down dozens of officials and would likely bring down dozens more. I thought about Brennan, dead in his basement, about Pavel, shot in my safe house apartment, about Victor, murdered in federal prison. about Henderson and Thompson and Walsh and all the others who died for asking questions. Tomorrow, I would tell their stories to the world. The hearing room was packed with reporters, cameras, and spectators. I sat at a long table facing a panel of senators and representatives, my hands shaking despite the beta blockers the FBI doctor had given me. "Mr. Davidson," the committee chairman began, "please tell us how you first became aware of irregularities at Meridian Technologies." For the next 4 hours, I told my story. Every detail, every revelation, every moment of fear and confusion. I showed them the fake invoices, played recordings of my conversations with Brennan, explained how the corruption network operated. The senators asked tough questions. Some seemed skeptical, others outraged. All of them wanted to know how something like this could happen. "In your opinion, Mr. Davidson," one senator asked, "how extensive is this corruption?" "Based on what I've seen," I replied, "I believe it reaches into every major law enforcement agency. FBI, DEA, U.S. attorneys' offices, federal courts. It's not just a few bad actors, it's a systematic compromise of our justice system." That's a serious accusation. It's a serious problem. When the hearing ended, I was exhausted but relieved. I told the truth, all of it, in front of the entire country. That night, the story dominated every news channel. My face was on the front page of every newspaper. The corruption scandal had a human face now, and it was mine. Rodriguez met me at the hotel that evening. "How do you feel?" "Exposed." "That's good. Exposure is protection now. What happens next?" "Now we see how many more dominoes fall." Over the following weeks, my testimony triggered an avalanche of new investigations. Congressional committees launched inquiries into multiple agencies. The Justice Department appointed special prosecutors. Internal affairs divisions opened hundreds of cases. The corruption network that had seemed so powerful began to crumble under the weight of public scrutiny. But the people behind it weren't going down without a fight. 3 days after my testimony, someone tried to poison me at a restaurant. The FBI food tester caught it before I took a bite. A week later, a car tried to run me down as I left the courthouse after another hearing. My security detail pushed me out of the way just in time. 2 weeks after that, someone sent a package bomb to my hotel. The bomb squad disposed of it safely, but the message was clear. Going public hadn't made me safe. "They're getting desperate," Rodriguez said. "That's good news." "How is attempted murder good news?" "Because desperate people make mistakes." She was right. Each assassination attempt left clues, DNA evidence, fingerprints, surveillance footage. The FBI was building cases against the people trying to kill me, which led them to the people giving the orders. 6 months after my congressional testimony, the scope of what we'd uncovered was staggering. 127 government officials arrested or indicted, 45 companies shut down for money laundering $340 million in assets, seized 23 murders solved and attributed to the corruption network, but the biggest victory came when they arrested the man behind it all. Senator Richard Blackwood had been running the corruption network for over a decade. As chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, he'd had access to information about every major federal investigation. He'd used that access to protect criminals, eliminate threats, and build a shadow network that reached into every corner of the justice system. When they arrested him, they found evidence linking him to dozens of murders, including Victor's death in prison. I testified against Blackwood at his trial, facing him across a courtroom as I described how his network had operated. He stared at me with cold hatred throughout my testimony, but he never said a word. The jury convicted him on all charges, life in prison without the possibility of parole. As they led him away in shackles, he looked back at me one last time. "This isn't over," he mouthed silently. But it was over. The corruption network was dismantled. The murders were solved. The criminals were in prison. I was finally free. That was 5 years ago. Today, I live under my real name in a small city in Colorado. I work as a cybersecurity consultant, helping companies detect financial fraud. It's not exciting work, but it's honest work. And after everything I've been through, honest work feels like a luxury. I still get death threats occasionally. Men like Blackwood have followers, people who believe I'm a traitor for exposing the truth. But the FBI monitors the threats, and so far, none have turned into actual danger. Rodriguez retired from the FBI and now teaches criminal justice at a university. Martinez runs the financial crimes unit in the Denver field office. We stay in touch, sharing updates about our lives and families. Last month, Rodriguez sent me a newspaper clipping, a headline that read, "Financial Fraud Network Exposed by Employee Whistleblower." The story was about a woman in Phoenix who discovered her company was being used to launder money for drug cartels. Instead of staying quiet, she'd gone to the FBI. Instead of being intimidated by threats, she'd testified before a grand jury. The corruption network was shut down. The criminals were arrested. Another ordinary person had found the courage to do the right thing. I kept the newspaper clipping on my desk as a reminder that the system only works when people are willing to fight for it. That justice isn't something that happens automatically. It's something we have to choose again and again, even when the cost is high. My boss tried to fire me for something I didn't do. Instead, I exposed something he actually did. And in doing so, I helped expose something much bigger. A corruption network that had been poisoning our justice system for years. It cost me my old life, my sense of security, my anonymity. But it gave me something more valuable. The knowledge that sometimes one person really can make a difference, even when that person is just a mid-level IT worker who got curious about some fake invoices.
My grandmother lied about my mom's death for 15 years to keep me from finding out she was still alive. I was 8 when Dad sat me down and explained that Mom had died in a car accident. He showed me the newspaper clipping, the funeral program, even took me to visit her grave every Mother's Day. Grandmother would hold my hand at the cemetery, tears streaming down her face as she placed flowers on the headstone. "She loved you more than anything," Grandmother would whisper. "She'd want you to be strong." For 15 years, I believed it. I grieved her. I talked to her picture every night. I inherited her jewelry when I turned 18, a box of treasures Grandmother had saved for me. The lie unraveled completely by accident. Last month, I was cleaning out Grandmother's attic after she moved to assisted living. Buried behind Christmas decorations, I found a shoebox full of letters. The return address made my hands shake. Mom's full name and an address in Oregon. The postmark was from 3 weeks ago. My dead mother had been writing letters. With trembling fingers, I opened the most recent one. "Dear Mom, I know you'll never respond, but I have to keep trying. Violet turns 23 next month. Does she still love art? Does she remember the stories I used to tell her? I've written her so many letters over the years, but you return them all unopened. Please just tell me she's okay. Tell me she's happy. I think about her every single day." I sat there on the dusty attic floor, reading 15 years of unopened letters. Birthday cards, Christmas presents, school photos she'd somehow obtained, a wedding invitation to a ceremony that never happened because she thought I hated her. Each letter begged Grandmother to let her see me. Each one was more desperate than the last. The final letter was the worst. "I'm getting married next month to a wonderful man who understands my past. We want children, but I can't move forward without knowing if Violet is alive and well. This is my last letter. If you don't respond, I'll assume she wants nothing to do with me and I'll stop trying." That's when I found the thick manila envelope hidden at the bottom. Inside were copies of every letter I'd never received. Birthday cards, graduation congratulations, care packages for college, all returned to sender by Grandmother. I drove straight to the assisted living facility. Grandmother was in her garden, tending roses like she hadn't destroyed my entire life. "Why?" I asked, dropping the shoebox at her feet. Her face went white. For a moment, she looked exactly like the frail old woman she was, not the manipulator I'd just discovered. "She left you," Grandmother said finally. "She chose drugs over her own daughter." These letters don't sound like someone who chose drugs. Grandmother's eyes hardened. "You don't understand what she put this family through." "Then explain it." She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Your father was cheating. Your mother found out and threatened to take you away from us. We couldn't let that happen." The words hit me like a physical blow. "So you convinced me she was dead?" "We convinced her you were better off without her." I stared at this woman who'd raised me, who'd comforted me through nightmares about losing my mother, who'd helped me place flowers on a fake grave for 15 years. "Where is she?" Grandmother looked up with eyes full of regret. "Portland." "But Violet, you have to understand." I was already walking away. That night, I booked a flight to Oregon. I found her address through the letters. For the first time in 15 years, I was going to see my mother. But what I discovered when I got there changed everything I thought I knew about my family. The address led me to a modest blue house in a quiet neighborhood. Children's toys scattered the front yard. Wind chimes hung from the porch, playing the same melody Mom used to hum when she tucked me in. I sat in my rental car for 20 minutes, working up the courage to knock. Through the front window, I could see her. She was older, her hair shorter, laugh lines around her eyes. She was helping a little boy with homework at the kitchen table. The scene looked so normal, so peaceful. Everything I'd been told was a lie. When I finally knocked, the man who answered was tall with kind eyes, the husband she'd mentioned in her letters. "Can I help you?" he asked. Before I could answer, I heard her voice from inside. "Who is it, honey?" "I'm looking for my mother," I said, my voice barely steady. His eyes widened with understanding. "Violet?" She appeared behind him, and the years collapsed. She looked exactly like I remembered, just older. Her hand flew to her mouth, and she made a sound like she'd been punched. "Baby?" she whispered. I started crying immediately. 15 years of grief and anger and confusion poured out of me in that doorway. She pulled me into her arms, and I was 8 years old again, safe and loved. "I thought you hated me," she sobbed. "I thought you never wanted to see me again. I thought you were dead." I managed through my tears. Her husband, David, I learned later, ushered us inside. The little boy at the table turned out to be my half-brother, Leo, who was 7. He looked just like I did at that age. "You're my sister?" he asked, not understanding the magnitude of what was happening. Mom couldn't let go of my hand as she explained everything. After she discovered Dad's affair, she'd demanded a divorce and full custody. That's when Dad and Grandmother conspired against her. They'd hired a private investigator to dig up dirt from her past, a brief struggle with prescription painkillers after a surgery when I was 6. "It was 3 months, she said. "I went to rehab, got clean, never touched another pill, but they used it to paint me as an unfit mother." The family court battle was vicious. Dad had money and connections. Mom had a public defender. Grandmother testified that Mom was unstable and dangerous. They had witnesses testify about things that never happened. Mom continued, her voice getting stronger as she told me the truth. "Your father's secretary claimed she'd seen me drinking before picking you up from school. His golf partner said I'd called him asking for drug connections. All lies, but convincing ones. Why didn't you fight harder?" I tried. For 8 months, I fought. But every court appearance, every deposition, they'd bring up new accusations. They said I'd been prostituting myself to pay for drugs, that I'd left you alone overnight while I was getting high. None of it was true, but the mud was sticking. She showed me the court documents she'd kept all these years, page after page of character assassination, carefully orchestrated to destroy any credibility she had. The breaking point came when they threatened to put you in foster care, she said. They claimed that if the court couldn't trust me, and if your father was proven unfit due to his work schedule, you'd become a ward of the state while they investigated both of us. They made me choose, Mom said, her voice breaking. Give up all rights to you, or they'd drag the case out for years, traumatize you with custody battles, and likely win anyway because of my medical history. Worse, you might end up in the system, so you signed away your rights? They told me it was temporary, that once things settled down, we could revisit it. But they lied about that too. That's when she showed me the real kicker, a document I'd never seen before. A restraining order Dad had filed against her, claiming she was stalking me and making threats against the family. I tried to see you at school once, she said, just to make sure you were okay. The principal called the police. Your father had told them I was dangerous. She'd spent years trying to contact me through lawyers, only to be told I didn't want to see her. When she tried to call, Dad said I was too upset to talk. When she showed up at school, Grandmother convinced her I was scared of her. They orchestrated the fake funeral to make it final, she said. Your father showed me pictures of you crying at my grave, said you were finally getting closure and I needed to let you heal. But you kept writing. I couldn't stop hoping. Every birthday, every Christmas, every major holiday, I'd send letters to Grandmother begging for news. She returned them all unopened. But there was more to the story. Mom had moved to Oregon not just to escape, but because Dad's family had connections everywhere in our home state. They'd made sure she couldn't get decent work, couldn't find an apartment, couldn't even get a library card without someone recognizing her name and treating her like a criminal. Your Uncle Pete called every job I applied for, she said. Told them I was a drug addict who abandoned her child. It took me 3 years to realize I had to leave the state entirely. Uncle Pete, Dad's brother, who'd always been my favorite relative. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who never missed a birthday, who'd comforted me at Mom's funeral. Pete knew the truth. They all knew. Your Aunt Linda, your cousins, even your father's parents before they passed. It was a family conspiracy. The betrayal ran deeper than I'd imagined. Every family gathering, every holiday dinner, every time someone asked about Mom and they'd all get that sad, sympathetic look, they knew she was alive. They knew I was grieving a lie. That's when she showed me her room. It was a shrine to me. Photos of me from elementary school through college. Somehow she'd gotten copies. My school awards, art projects she'd persuaded teachers to share, newspaper clippings when I made Dean's List. She'd been following my entire life from a distance. But it wasn't just photos. She'd kept everything. Report cards Mrs. Thompson had smuggled to her. Programs from school plays she'd never been allowed to attend. Even a napkin from my Sweet 16 party. Apparently, the caterer's daughter had been in my class and thought Mom deserved to know I was okay. How did you get all this? I asked. Your second grade teacher, Mrs. Thompson. She never believed I was as bad as your family claimed. She'd send me updates, photos from class parties. She's the one who told me you were studying art in college. Mrs. Thompson. I remembered her. The teacher who always asked about my mom, who seemed sad when I said she was dead. She knew. She suspected something was wrong when you suddenly stopped talking about me and started saying I was dead. But she couldn't prove anything. What about the other teachers? Some helped when they could. Your high school art teacher, Ms. Rodriguez. She sent me photos of your paintings, said you had real talent, just like your mother. She didn't know I was alive, but she knew something wasn't right about the story she'd been told. The network of people who'd helped without knowing they were helping was staggering. The school nurse who'd mentioned my menstrual cycles to Mom through Mrs. Thompson, so she'd know I was healthy. The librarian who'd noted what books I checked out. Even the custodian who'd told Mrs. Thompson when I seemed sad or upset. There were so many people who cared about you, Mom said. They just didn't know how to help. David brought us tea and quietly explained that he'd been encouraging Mom to hire a private investigator to find me. She was afraid you'd reject her, he said. But I told her she had to try. We were supposed to start the search next month, Mom said. I'd given up on Grandmother responding, but I couldn't give up on you. David had his own story. His first wife had died of cancer when Leo was 3, and he'd met Mom at a grief counseling group 2 years later. She talked about you constantly, he said with a sad smile. For the first year I knew her, I thought you were dead too. It wasn't until we got serious that she told me the truth. What did you think when you found out? I asked him. I was furious, he said. I have a daughter too, from my first marriage, and I couldn't imagine anyone keeping her from me. I wanted to drive to your state immediately and confront your father. Why didn't you? Because your mother was terrified it would backfire, that your family would convince you she was trying to disrupt your life, or worse, that they'd move you somewhere she'd never find you again. We talked until dawn. She told me about her life, how she'd moved to Oregon to start over, become a social worker helping kids in foster care, met David at a grief counseling group after his first wife died of cancer. I wanted to help children who felt as lost as I did, she said. But her work had a darker motivation too. She'd specialized in cases where children were separated from fit parents due to false allegations or family manipulation. I've reunited 17 families over the years, she said. Every time I helped a child find their way back to a parent who loved them, I imagined someone doing the same for you and me. Leo had been David's son from his first marriage. Mom had raised him since he was 3 after David's first wife died. He knows about you, she said. I've told him stories about his big sister who lived far away. You talked about me? Every day. David says I talk about you too much. She smiled through fresh tears. He's not wrong. Leo had his own questions. At 7, he couldn't understand why his sister had been gone so long, but he was excited to finally meet me. I saved you this, he said, running to his room and returning with a drawing he'd made. It was a stick figure family. Him, Mom, David, and a taller girl labeled Violet. I drew you bigger because Mom said you're grown up, he explained. That's when I realized the full scope of what had been stolen from us. Not just 15 years together, But Leo's childhood with his real sister, graduations and birthdays and holidays, the chance to grieve together when my grandfather died last year, I'd cried alone while she wasn't even told he'd passed. Grandfather's funeral, I said suddenly. You didn't know? Mom's face crumpled. He died? When? Last December, cancer. It was quick. She sobbed then, not just for the loss, but for missing the chance to say goodbye to the man who'd raised her. He loved you, I said. Even after everything, he'd ask about you sometimes. I think he knew something wasn't right. But grandmother always changed the subject. Did he suffer? No, he went peacefully. Dad said his last words were about hoping you were happy, wherever you were. We held each other while she grieved the father she'd lost twice. Once when she was forced to leave, and again when he died without knowing the truth. That afternoon, she took me to places she'd lived when I was little, places I barely remembered but that flooded back as we walked through them. The park where she'd taught me to swing, the ice cream shop where we'd go for special treats, the library where she'd read to me every Saturday morning. I come here sometimes, she admitted as we stood outside our old apartment building, just to remember when we were together. The building manager recognized her, Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman who'd always liked Mom. Is this little Violet? She asked, beaming. My goodness, you're beautiful. Your mother used to bring your picture to show me how you'd grown. She did? Every year on your birthday. She'd cry and tell me stories about what you must be doing, what you must look like. I always wondered why you never visited. Another person who'd known the truth but hadn't been able to help. I need to call Dad, I said that evening. Mom's face hardened. Violet, you should know. He remarried when you were 12. They had 2 kids. Boys. He replaced us both. I'm so sorry, baby. I never wanted this for you. The stepmother had seemed nice enough when I was growing up, but now I wondered what she knew. Had Dad told her the truth about Mom? Did she know she was helping raise a daughter stolen from her mother? I called Dad from Mom's kitchen, putting it on speaker so she could hear. Violet? It's early. Is everything okay? I'm in Oregon, I said, with Mom. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Sweetheart, your mother is alive. I know. I found the letters. Another pause. You don't understand the whole story. Then tell me. But instead of explanations, he started making excuses. The custody battle had been expensive. I was better off with stability. Mom was unstable back then. They were protecting me. You let me grieve a living person for 15 years. We thought it was best. You thought it was convenient. Mom squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face as she listened to him scramble for justifications. The affair was a mistake, he said. I was young and stupid, but your mother was going to destroy our family. You destroyed our family. I cut him off. You were the one cheating. You were the one who chose to lie instead of face the consequences. She was going to take you away from me. Because that's what happens when you betray your wife. You don't get to have both the affair and the family. I want to see you, Dad said finally. Come home and we'll talk. I am home, I said, looking around Mom's kitchen. I hung up. The phone rang immediately. Then again. Dad called 6 more times before I turned it off. That night, Mom showed me the legal documents she'd kept. Not just the custody papers, but everything. The restraining order. The psychological evaluation they'd forced her to undergo. The drug test she'd passed, but that somehow got lost by the court. They had me evaluated by 3 different psychologists, she said. The first 2 said I was a fit mother. The third was a friend of your father's lawyer. The psychological evaluation from Dad's expert was devastating. It painted Mom as manipulative, unstable, and potentially dangerous to me. It recommended supervised visitation at best, full separation at worst. I kept copies of everything, she said. Even though my lawyer said it was over, I knew someday you might want to know the truth. The most painful document was her own handwritten statement, 12 pages of her side of the story that the court had refused to consider. In it, she detailed Dad's affair, his drinking, his increasingly controlling behavior. She documented dates, times, witnesses. She'd built a compelling case that the judge had ignored. Judge Morrison, I read from the file. I remember him. He and Dad played golf together. That's when I knew I'd lost, Mom said, when I saw them laughing together in the courthouse hallway. But the truly sickening part was what came after. The court documents showed that immediately after Mom signed away her rights, Dad had petitioned to seal the case. Everything we'd just read, the lies, the manipulation, the corruption, was supposed to be buried forever. He didn't want you to ever find out, Mom said, even when you became an adult. The next morning, I called Mrs. Thompson. She was retired now, but remembered me immediately. Violet, how are you, sweetheart? I found my mom, I said. The silence on her end was deafening. Oh, honey, she finally whispered. I'm so sorry. I tried to help, but I didn't know how. You did help. More than you know. She told me her side of the story, how she'd noticed the change in me after Mom died, how I'd gone from a bright, confident child to a sad, withdrawn one almost overnight. You used to talk about your mother constantly, she said. She was your whole world. Then suddenly you wouldn't mention her at all. When I asked, you'd just say she was dead and change the subject. Why didn't you report it? I tried. I called the school counselor, suggested maybe you needed help processing your grief, but your grandmother came in for a meeting and explained that you were seeing a therapist, that the family was handling it. There was no therapist? I know that now. But at the time, I had no reason to doubt her. She seemed genuinely concerned about you. Mrs. Thompson had spent years wondering if she'd failed me. She'd sent those updates to Mom not knowing if they helped, but hoping they meant something to someone who cared about me. Your mother sent me a Christmas card every year, she said, just to thank me for the photos. She never asked for more than I was comfortable giving, never put me in a position where I'd have to lie. She was always respectful. What did you think happened to her? Honestly, I thought your father had her killed. The casual way she said it shocked me. That sounds extreme, I said. Does it? A woman threatens to expose a man's affair and take his child. She has a history of prescription drug use that makes her vulnerable to accusations. She disappears completely, and suddenly there's a convenient car accident with a body that's never found. The body was found. I saw the newspaper clipping. Different woman. I looked it up years later when the internet made it easier. The woman who died in that accident was named Patricia Morrison. Married, no children. Nothing like your mother's situation. Even my second-grade teacher had put together a better investigation than I had. That afternoon, Mom showed me the cemetery where I'd been visiting my grave. The headstone was real. They'd actually purchased a plot and stone with her name on it. The newspaper clipping? I asked. They used a real accident from the same day. Different woman, similar age. Your grandmother was always good with details. Is anyone buried here? No, it's an empty plot. We stood there looking at her fake grave, and I thought about all the times I'd cried there, begging her spirit to send me signs she was okay. I'm so angry, I told her. Good, she said. You should be. But she had her own anger to work through. 15 years of believing I hated her. 15 years of wondering if I was safe, if I was happy, if I even remembered her. Do you know what the worst part was? She asked as we drove back to her house. Tell me, your 16th birthday. I spent the whole day imagining you getting your driver's license, going on dates, becoming the woman I'd never get to meet. That night, I had a breakdown. David found me on the bathroom floor, sobbing uncontrollably. What happened? He held me while I cried, and then he said something that probably saved my life. He said, she's out there loving the memory of you, even if she thinks you're gone. That love doesn't disappear. Someday she'll understand. I thought about 16-year-old me, crying myself to sleep because I missed my dead mother, neither of us knowing the other was alive and grieving the same loss. I stayed in Oregon for 2 weeks. I met Mom's friends, who'd heard about me for years. Her best friend, Carmen, hugged me like she'd known me my whole life. Your mom has your baby pictures on her phone, Carmen said. She shows them to everyone. We all feel like we watched you grow up. I helped Leo with homework and learned he was obsessed with dinosaurs, just like I'd been at his age. I watched Mom and David together. They were genuinely happy, the kind of contentment I'd never seen in my father's house. David had his own way of making me feel welcome. He'd clear out his home office so I could have a quiet place to process everything. He'd cook my favorite foods. Somehow Mom had told him things I liked that I'd forgotten telling her when I was little. She never stopped being your mother, he said one evening as we cleaned dishes together. Even when she couldn't be with you, she never stopped loving you like one. I asked him about the years before I'd found them. She'd have good days and bad days, he said. Good days, she'd be hopeful. She'd talk about what she'd say when she saw you again, what she'd want to know about your life. Bad days, she'd be convinced you were better off without her. What changed? Leo. When I adopted him, watching her become his mom, she was so natural at it, so good. It made me realize how much had been stolen from both of you. The night before I was supposed to fly back, I made a decision. I want to stay. I told Mom, honey, you have a life. I have a job. That's not the same thing. I want to get to know you. And Leo, I want to be part of this family. She cried and held me like she was afraid I'd disappear again. I called my boss and quit, found a sublet in Portland, started working at a local art gallery while figuring out my next move. But staying meant confronting the rest of my family. Dad called constantly, demanding I come home. Grandmother called crying, begging me to visit. I ignored them both. Then Uncle Pete called. Your father told me what happened, he said. I think you're making a mistake. You knew she was alive. Silence. Pete, you knew. You all knew. It was complicated. It was criminal. You helped them destroy evidence, falsify documents, commit fraud. We were protecting you. From what? From having a mother who loved me? He tried to justify it for 20 minutes. How Mom was unstable. How the family was just trying to do what was best. How I didn't understand the full situation. I understand that you're all liars, I said, and hung up. Aunt Linda tried next, then my cousins. Each call was the same, a mix of defensiveness and attempted manipulation. They'd minimized Mom's pain, justified their deception, and tried to convince me I was throwing away my real family for a fantasy. The worst was my cousin Beth, who I'd been close to growing up. She abandoned you, Violet, Beth said. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. A real mother would have fought harder. She did fight. Your family destroyed the evidence. You're being dramatic. You had a good childhood. You were loved and cared for, built on a lie. Sometimes lies protect people. Sometimes lies protect liars. After I hung up, I felt hollow. These people had been my world for 15 years. They'd celebrated my birthdays, attended my graduations, comforted me when I was sad, and all of it had been built on the foundation of keeping me from my mother. Then Dad showed up in Oregon. I was having coffee with Mom when I saw him through the window, standing on her front porch. She went rigid. You don't have to see him, she said. Yes, I do. He looked older, grayer. When Mom opened the door, he stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. You look good, he said quietly. What do you want? Mom asked. To talk to my daughter. I'm listening, I said from behind Mom. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd learned the truth 2 weeks earlier. Dad looked around at the photos of me covering the walls, the evidence of 15 years of love from a distance. I never meant for it to go this far, he said. How far did you mean for it to go? I asked. He couldn't answer that. I was young and stupid. I made mistakes. You destroyed our family because you couldn't keep it in your pants. Mom flinched but didn't defend him. She was going to take you away from me, Dad said, because you were cheating on her. I know I hurt your mother, but I couldn't lose you too. So you made sure she lost me instead. That's when he broke down. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen him use when he wanted something, but real, ugly sobbing. I regret it every day, he gasped. Especially after I met your stepmother. Watching her with our boys, seeing what a real mother looks like, I realized what I'd taken from you. And from her, I said, gesturing to Mom. I tried to find her when you turned 18, to tell her you were an adult and could make your own choices. But she'd changed her name, moved away. I thought she was gone forever. She was right here, writing letters, begging to see me. He looked at Mom with something that might have been remorse. I never saw the letters. Mom handled all that. Don't blame grandmother, I said. You could have stopped this any time. You could have told me the truth when I turned 18, when I graduated college, when I got engaged last year. You were engaged? Mom asked, surprised. It didn't work out. Turns out I have trust issues. I looked pointedly at Dad. I wanted to tell you, Dad said, but I was afraid you'd hate me. I do hate you, I said simply, but I would have hated you less if you told me the truth. We sat in silence. Finally, Dad asked the question I'd been dreading. Are you coming home? I am home. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. What about school? Your job? Your friends? I can finish school anywhere. I'll make new friends. As for work, I looked at Mom. I'm thinking about social work. Mom smiled, and I knew she understood. I wanted to help other kids who'd been lied to, manipulated, stolen from their families. What about your stepmother and the boys? They love you. For the first time, I felt a pang of guilt. My half-brothers were innocent in this. They were 8 and 10, and they adored their big sister. I'll maintain a relationship with them, I said, but not through you. Dad left that evening. He hugged me goodbye, and for the first time, it felt like he was saying goodbye forever. I love you, he said. I know, I replied, but love isn't enough when it comes with lies. After he left, Mom and I talked about what came next. I don't want you to give up your whole life for me, she said. I'm not giving it up. I'm taking it back. 6 months later, I enrolled in Portland State's social work program. Mom and I see each other almost every day. Leo calls me his real sister now, not his half-sister. David treats me like I've always been part of the family, but integrating into their life wasn't seamless. There were awkward moments, inside jokes I didn't understand, family traditions I hadn't been part of, memories that didn't include me. Sometimes I felt like an intruder in their established dynamic. It's going to take time, Mom said, during one particularly difficult dinner when I'd felt left out of a conversation about Leo's early childhood. We have to learn how to be a family together. She was right. We had to figure out how to navigate holidays, how to handle disagreements, how to balance my relationship with her against her relationship with David and Leo. There were also practical issues. I had to transfer my credits, find new doctors, establish residency. I had to learn to drive in a new city, figure out the public transportation, find grocery stores and banks, and all the mundane aspects of building a life somewhere new. But the hardest part was dealing with my own trauma. 15 years of believing my mother was dead doesn't just disappear because you find out it's not true. I had night terrors for months. Dreams where I'd wake up and she'd be gone again, where I'd discover this was all an elaborate hallucination. You need therapy, Mom said gently after I had a panic attack in the grocery store because I'd lost sight of her for 30 seconds. I don't trust therapists, I said. What if they're working with Dad's family too? She found me a therapist who specialized in family reunification after parental alienation. Dr. Martinez understood immediately what I was dealing with. Your grief was real, she told me. Even though your mother wasn't actually dead, you experienced a real loss. The relationship you had with her was killed, even if she wasn't. Therapy helped me understand that I was grieving multiple losses. The mother I'd lost at 8, the 15 years we'd missed together, the family I'd thought I had but never really existed. It also helped me work through my anger, which was enormous and consuming. I was angry at Dad for starting the lie, at grandmother for maintaining it, at Uncle Pete and Aunt Linda for supporting it, at myself for never questioning it. Anger is appropriate here, Dr. Martinez said. The question is what you want to do with it. Dad sends money for school, which I accept. He's trying to make amends the only way he knows how. His new wife sent a card apologizing for the family's actions. Apparently, she'd figured out the truth years ago and had been pushing him to find Mom. The stepmother, Angela, called me directly one day. I want you to know I never knew the full story, she said. Your father told me your mother had abandoned you, that she was unstable and dangerous. I believed him because I loved him and trusted him. When did you figure out he was lying? When Tyler started asking about his sister's mother. Your father got so defensive, so evasive that I started digging. I found some of the court documents in his office. Why didn't you say anything? I tried. I told him he needed to tell you the truth, but he was terrified you'd cut him off completely. I did anyway. I know. And honestly, I think that's what it took for him to realize how badly he'd screwed up. She asked if I'd be willing to maintain a relationship with my half-brothers. And I said yes. They were innocent victims in this too. The boys, Tyler and Mason, didn't understand why I'd moved away or why I was suddenly talking about a mother they'd never heard of. Angela explained it as gently as she could, that there had been a misunderstanding about their sister's mom, and now we were fixing it. Is she nice? Tyler asked during a video call. Very nice, I said. You'd like her. Can we meet her? I looked at Mom, who nodded. Maybe someday. Grandmother passed away last month. She'd been in declining health since I discovered the letters. In her final days, she asked to see me. I went, but I didn't forgive her. I thought I was protecting you, she whispered from her hospital bed. You were protecting yourself, I replied, from facing what your son had done. I never meant for it to last so long. When? When did you decide 15 years was too long? She couldn't answer. She died holding the photo of Mom and me from my 8th birthday, the last picture taken before their lie began. At her funeral, I stood between my two families. Dad's side on one side, pretending to grieve for a woman who destroyed lives to protect her son, and Mom on the other side, attending to support me despite everything grandmother had done to her. The pastor talked about grandmother's devotion to family, her sacrifice for her loved ones. I wanted to scream that her devotion had been selective. Her sacrifices had been other people's lives. After the service, several family members approached Mom, the first time they'd seen her in 15 years. "You look well," Aunt Linda said stiffly. "No thanks to you," Mom replied. Uncle Pete tried to shake her hand. She ignored him. "I hope you can forgive us someday," he said. "I hope you can live with yourselves," she replied. I stood next to the fake grave they'd made for my mother and thought about all the ways the truth gets buried. How easy it is to convince someone that love looks like lies, that protection requires destruction. Dad stood on the other side of the cemetery, watching us, but not approaching. He'd lost the right to be part of this moment. After everyone left, Mom and I stood alone at grandmother's actual grave. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Empty," I said. "She took so much from us, and now she's gone and we'll never get answers to half our questions." "What questions?" "Like whether she ever regretted it. Whether she ever thought about telling me the truth. Whether she understood what she'd done to you. Does it matter?" I thought about that. No, I guess not. She made her choices. And now we get to make ours. 3 months after grandmother's death, I got a call that changed everything again. It was from a lawyer representing her estate. "Ms. Chen, I'm calling about your grandmother's will. She left you something that I think you need to see." The law office was in my hometown, so Mom and I drove there together. My first time back since I'd discovered the truth. Driving through familiar streets felt surreal. Everything looked smaller, shabbier than I remembered. The lawyer, Mr. Hughes, was clearly uncomfortable. "Your grandmother left detailed instructions about when to give you this," he said, handing me a thick envelope. "She specified it should only be given to you after her death, and only if you had already discovered the truth about your mother. She knew I'd found out. She received a report from the assisted living facility about your visit after you found the letters. She'd been expecting this for years." Inside the envelope was a letter in grandmother's handwriting. "Violet, if you're reading this, then you know what we did. I won't insult you by trying to justify it, but I want you to understand why. Your father wasn't just having an affair. He was embezzling money from his company to pay for it. When your mother found out, she didn't just threaten to leave him. She threatened to turn him into the police. We couldn't let him go to prison. You were 8 years old. You needed at least one parent. So we made a choice. We convinced your mother that if she disappeared quietly, we wouldn't press charges for her prescription drug use. If she tried to take you or expose your father, we'd have her arrested and you'd end up in foster care while she went to jail. She agreed to leave because she thought she was protecting you. But then your father's company started investigating the missing money anyway. He was going to be caught regardless. Rather than admit we'd destroyed your family for nothing, we doubled down. We told you she was dead. We made it permanent. Every year that passed made it harder to tell the truth. How do you explain to a child that you lied about her mother being dead? How do you admit that level of betrayal? So we kept lying and lying until the lies became the truth. I know you hate me. You should. But know that I loved you, even as I was hurting you. Everything I did was because I couldn't bear to see you suffer. I was wrong. I see that now. I made you suffer anyway. The money I'm leaving you, it's not enough to make up for what I took, but it's what your mother should have received in the divorce. Use it to build the life you should have had with her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Love, grandmother." There was more. Bank statements showing Dad had stolen nearly $200,000 from his company, police reports I'd never seen, and a confession letter from Dad, written but never sent, admitting to the embezzlement and the frame-up of Mom. "Your grandmother kept evidence of everything," Mr. Hughes said. "I think she always knew this day would come. The inheritance was substantial, enough to pay for my remaining education and help Mom and David buy a bigger house so Leo and I could each have our own rooms. But more than the money, the letter gave me something I hadn't expected: closure. For 15 years, I'd wondered what I'd done wrong, why my mother had left me. Learning that she'd actually sacrificed herself to protect me transformed everything. She didn't abandon you," Mom said as we read the letter together in the lawyer's parking lot. "She saved you." That evening, I called Dad. "I know about the embezzlement," I said without preamble. Silence. "You let Mom take the blame for your crimes. Violet, she could have turned you in. She could have sent you to prison and kept me. Instead, she gave up everything to protect me from having a father in jail." "I know. Do you? Do you really understand what she sacrificed?" "Yes." "Then why didn't you ever try to make it right?" More silence. "Because you're a coward," I answered for him. "Because admitting the truth would have meant facing the consequences of your actions." I was afraid. She was afraid too. She was afraid I'd grow up without a father, so she gave up being my mother. I hung up and never spoke to him again. 6 months later, I started working at the state's Child Services Department. My first case was a little girl whose father claimed her mother had abandoned them. The mother's family insisted she'd died in an accident. I looked at that file and thought about 15 years of stolen letters. "What does your instinct tell you?" my supervisor asked. "Someone's lying," I said. "Then let's find out who." It took 3 weeks, but we uncovered the truth. The mother hadn't died or abandoned her daughter. She'd been in a coma for 2 years after a car accident, and the father had told the child she was dead rather than let her see her mother in a hospital bed. When we reunited them, the little girl, only 6 years old, looked at her mother and said, "I knew you weren't really gone. I could feel you. Some lies are too big to bury forever." Eventually, the truth finds its way home. Mom and I are planning a trip to visit the graves of her parents. My grandparents, I barely remember. We're going to tell them what happened and that we found each other again. "Do you think they'd be proud of us?" she asked. "I think they'd be proud of you," I said, "for never giving up. Last week, Leo asked if he could change his last name to match mine and Mom's. I want people to know we're really family, he said. David was supportive. Family isn't about names, he said. But if it matters to Leo, it matters to me. So we're all going to be the same family, officially. It took 23 years, but I'm finally getting my mother back. And she's finally getting her daughter.